Good evening and welcome. Sorry we're a touch late. Not too bad, though. Welcome to this, calling the order, the meeting of the Common Council of Noblesville for Tuesday, February 25th. Please, Mr. Schwartz, Pete Schwartz, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Ms. Lees, roll call, please.
Mr. Ayr,
Present.
Mr. Boyce,
Present.
Mr. Davis,
Present.
Mr. O'Connor,
Present.
Mr. Peterson,
Here.
Mr. Schwartz,
Present.
Mr. Smith,
Present.
Ms. Wiles, Mr. Hampton.
Here.
Mr. President, you have a quorum.
Thank you very much, Ms. Lees. Approval of the minutes for February 11th, 2020.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion to approve and a second. This is a hand vote. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Carries 9-0. Petitions or comments, I'm sorry, I'm jumping ahead. Approval of the agenda. Is there a motion for that?
So moved. Second.
Motion and a second. Hand vote as well. Please raise your right hand. It's also 9-0. Thank you. Now, petitions or comments by citizens who are present. I don't have any here in front of me. There are cards just outside those doors. If you have a comment, would like to make it that tonight, just hand it to Ms. Lees. Fill it out first and then hand it to Ms. Lees. And that we can get your question in here this evening. Council committee reports. I don't know if we do. Mr. Peterson.
Downtown District Committee met last week, and we spent a great deal of time recapping 2019 and understanding the money that was moved forward into 2020. We got that taken care of. In addition to the $500,000 appropriation for this year, we have $726,000 and some change to work with. And we also met Kayla Arnold will come back to this board and present our ideas for 2020. We need to get those approved. And we're going to summarize it.
Thank you. Any other committee reports? Nothing?
Finance Committee minutes. The Finance Committee met last Thursday, and we discussed several items that are on the agenda this evening. And the claims do come to you with an approval from the committee, but yet they were amended after they were sent from the committee. So I will make the recommendation that we approve the claims as presented.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second to approve the claims. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. I know. Thank you. Previously discussed ordinances, number 03-02-20. Council to consider ordinance number 03-02-20, an ordinance regarding text amendments to ordinance number 49-08-16, the Saxony Corporate Campus Plan Development. Ms. Yelton.
Good evening. As you may recall, this is for the Saxony Corporate Campus that is contains approximately 280 acres, and it's bounded roughly by Bowden Road, Old 146th Street, 136th Street, and property that continues east of Bergen Boulevard. The original plan development was adopted back in 2002. These proposed amendments would allow for age-restricted multifamily in a certain area within the sub-district of C1, and it's more specifically adjacent to Harold Parkway. It is east of Cabela Parkway, north of what would be Duluth Trading Company, and also sets forth the development standards, architectural standards, and signage standards. This was heard at a public hearing at the Plan Commission, and it was sent forward with favorable recommendation for adoption.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Yelton? Thank you. Is there a motion?
Mr. President, I would move to approve ordinance 03-02-20. Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve ordinance number 03-02-20. This is a roll call vote. Mrs. Lees.
Mr. Ayers.
Aye.
Mr. Boyce.
Aye.
Mr. Davis.
Aye.
Mr. O'Connor.
Aye.
Mr. Peterson.
Aye.
Mr. Schwartz.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Ms. Wiles.
Aye.
Mr. Hampton.
Aye.
9-0, the ordinance is adopted.
Thank you. Council to consider ordinance number 04-02-20, an ordinance authorizing the investment of public funds pursuant to IC 5-13-9-5.7. Mr. Spalding.
Mr. President, members of the council, Jeff Spalding, Controller, and before you is an ordinance on second reading, so it was presented at the last council meeting, and it's one part of three items that are all related that we'll be discussing tonight. One is done as an ordinance, the other two are done as a resolution. And I will say this, too, sitting there thinking about it, that it's fairly clear that there wasn't a coherent strategy put in place when all these state laws were put together. It seems like they were all done at separate times, so it's a little tough linking them all together, but they are all linked. And this ordinance, what it does of the three, it basically establishes the authority for the city to invest in instruments with a maturity of longer than 2 years but less than 5 years. And if the city does want to make some investments in instruments like that, only up to 25% of its invested funds could go into those longer duration instruments. And the reason why you would have that is in most normal market environments, longer-term longer-term debt yields or longer-term investments yield higher interest rate returns to the city. So the purpose of this is to allow the city to do that type of thing if the circumstances support doing so. So with that.
All right, thank you. Any questions for Mr. Spalding?
President,
Ms. Wiles.
I would make a motion that we approve ordinance 04-02-20.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve ordinance number 04-02-20. This is another roll call vote. Ms. Lees.
Mr. Boyce.
Aye.
Mr. Davis.
Aye.
Mr. O'Connor.
Aye.
Mr. Peterson.
Aye.
Mr. Schwartz.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Ms. Wiles.
Aye.
Mr. Ayers. Mr. Hampton.
Aye.
9 aye, 0 nay, the ordinance is adopted.
Thank you, Ms. Lees. Moving to number 05-02-20. Council to consider ordinance number 05-02-20, an ordinance to reestablish the cumulative capital development fund tax rate. Mr. Spalding.
Again, Mr. President, members of the council, before you is another ordinance on second reading, so it was introduced last council meeting, and it's more or less a housekeeping type of item, but there is a requirement in state law for this specific fund that the city has, that if we want to maintain our tax rate at its current level, each year the council has to take this affirmative action saying, yes, we want to maintain the tax rate at the current level. So that's what it does, and just keeps that tax rate at 5 cents per $100 of assessed value. And if there's any questions, I'm happy to take that. Otherwise, I'll request approval.
Any questions for Mr. Spalding? No. This is a matter of a public hearing, so I'm opening the public hearing for 05-02-20.
Mr. President,
Boyce.
seeing no members of the public coming forward to discuss the public hearing 05-02-20, then I make a motion that we close the public hearing.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. This is a hand vote to close the public hearing. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Carries, thank you. Now, do we have a motion for the ordinance?
Mr. President, I would make a motion to approve ordinance 05-02-20.
Second.
We We have a motion and a second to approve ordinance number 05-02-20. This is a roll call vote. Ms. Lees?
Mr. Davis.
Aye.
Mr. O'Connor.
Aye.
Mr. Peterson.
Aye.
Schwartz.
Aye.
Mr. Smith. Ms. Wiles.
Aye.
Mr. Air.
Aye.
Mr. Boyce.
Aye.
Mr. Hampton.
Aye.
9 ayes, 0 nay, the ordinance is adopted.
Thank you, Ms. Lees. Council to consider ordinance number 06-02-20, an ordinance approving additional appropriations in the Park and Recreation Fund. Mr. Spalding.
Yeah, again, one more item on second reading, and as you referenced, pretty straightforward. It's an additional appropriation from the Parks and Recreation Fund to the Parks Department for a public purpose grant to provide support to the Friends of Central Pool for some major repairs to the pool at Forest Park.
Any questions? I know we heard from the friends at the park or at the pool last time, so there's no one here for that, right? Okay.
Kim's here.
Oh,
Yes.
do you want to say anything this time?
Came all this way.
No? You're feeling good? Okay.
Mr. President?
Mr. Ayer.
I move that we approve ordinance.
Wait a minute, I'm sorry, I have to open a public hearing. This is a matter of public hearing, so we will open a public hearing for ordinance 06-02-20.
Mr. President, seeing no one come forward, I'd like to close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion and a second to close the public hearing. This is a hand vote. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Public hearing is closed. Now we need another motion.
Mr. President,
Mr. Ayer.
I move we approve ordinance 06-02-20, an ordinance approving additional appropriation in the Parks and Recreational Fund.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve ordinance number 06-02-20. This is a roll call vote. Ms. Lees.
Mr. O'Connor.
Aye.
Mr. Peterson.
Aye.
Mr. Schwartz.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Ms. Wiles.
Aye.
Mr. Air.
Aye.
Mr. Boyce.
Aye.
Mr. Davis.
Aye.
Mr. Hampton.
Aye.
9 ayes, 0 nay, the ordinance is adopted.
Thank you. Moving forward to the new ordinances for discussion. Number 07-02-20, the council to consider ordinance number 07-02-20, an ordinance amending sections 30.02, 33A-.02, and 37.99 of the Noblesville Code of Ordinances.
Mr. President, I'd like to move to introduce ordinance 07-02-20.
Second.
Introduce Mr. Light.
Thank you, Mr. President, council members, Matt Light, Deputy Mayor. I suspect this won't be the most exciting item on your agenda tonight, but nonetheless, we think it includes some necessary changes and cleanup to municipal code. Ms. Bennett will be here next meeting to address any questions, but I'm glad to go through a brief explanation of what this does. It does three basic things. It reflects the change in the makeup of the Board of Works to go from 3 members to 5 members. It makes a couple of changes to reflect the fact that we have a clerk as opposed to a clerk treasurer. And it also specifies what was probably a lack of specificity in Chapter 37 of the code to clearly apply the penalty for violating the section that prohibits smoking in municipal buildings, to apply the penalty just to that section and not to other sections in that same chapter.
Any questions for Mr. Light? As he said, Ms. Bennett will be here next week or 2 weeks from now to answer any other questions you might have. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
It is introduced. Moving forward to miscellaneous, number 1, council to consider resolution number RC-6-20, a resolution establishing an investment policy for the city of Noblesville. Mr. Spalding.
All right, thank you, Mr. President, members of the council. Again, related to the ordinance that you just adopted, under that ordinance, there is a requirement for that ordinance to be valid, the city has to have an investment policy. Well, the city already had an investment policy. The ordinance you adopted extended that authority for another 4 years, and this is extending that investment policy that we had unchanged for the same term as that ordinance extended the authority to do the investing in longer-term instruments. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to take them.
Any questions for Mr. Spalding?
President,
Connor?
I would move that we approve Resolution RC-6-20 as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve resolution number RC-6-20. This is a hand vote. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Might as well stay up there, Mr. Spalding. This is now what, resolution number 2, correct? I'm sorry, miscellaneous number 2. Miscellaneous 2, council to consider resolution number RC-7-20, a resolution authorizing the investment of public funds pursuant to IC 5-13-95. Mr. Spalding.
All right. Again, the final of the trio of investment in public funds items. And this last one does one other very specific little thing, and it provides authorization for the city when it is seeking to invest its funds to invest in certificate deposits of any bank located in Indiana under the basic blanket state law. Municipalities may only invest in CDs of banks located in their geographic area, and the rationale for doing this is just to have a broader market that you're looking to place your investments, and that makes a lot of sense also because different banks at different times for different circumstances are trying to attract capital, and you want to be able to, when you are making those investment decisions, seek out those banks that are offering the higher interest rate to attract capital. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Any questions for Mr. Spalding?
Mr. President,
Yes.
I would make a motion that we approve miscellaneous item number 2, RC-7-20.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve resolution number RC-7-20. This is also a hand vote. All those in favor, raise your right hand. I know. Thank you. You're right. Miscellaneous number 3, council to consider resolution number RC-8-20, a resolution approving an economic development agreement with Panacea Medical Technologies. Mr. Mayor.
Good evening, Mr. President, members of the council. I've never stood at this podium before. Thought I'd just change the view a little bit. No, it gives me great, Chris Jensen, Mayor of the City of Noblesville, for the past 57 days. It gives me great pride to stand in front of you tonight to present Resolution 8, RC 8-20, that would approve an economic development agreement with Panacea Medical Technologies, Inc., to develop its North American headquarters here in Noblesville. As most of you saw last week, it was an exciting day for our city to announce that Panacea Medical will be locating its North American headquarters here in the city of Noblesville. It's a product of a trade mission the governor took in October over to India to spur business development for the city of Noblesville. That lead was brought to us in late 2019. And we competed against many sites in the city of the state of Indiana, as well as sites in Wisconsin, as well as Michigan, and were able to be selected by Panacea for their North American headquarters. To give you a little background on Panacea, it's represented tonight by President and CEO Raghu Padmanabhan and his family. I hope you get the chance to meet Raghu. He'll be with me tonight and answer any questions you may have, and his wonderful wife Anitha is here as well. They'll also be there on Thursday at the State of the City address for the Chamber of Commerce luncheon. Please get to know them. They are wonderful, wonderful people, and now members of our Noblesville family. It's a company that aims to improve global access to cancer care by providing high-quality and affordable medical equipment across the globe. Panacea radiation machines helped care for more than 150,000 current cancer patients. Just to refresh your memory, this is to locate on the property is 8.5 acres in size and is located on the southeast corner
of 141st and Oleo Road. And some of you may recall, this is city-owned real estate that was purchased as part of the Borg Warner economic development deal. This is a nearly $12 million investment on a 60,000 square foot building. This will create 65 new jobs for the city of Noblesville with an average wage of $80,000 or $40 an hour, including benefits. Just to give you some context on that, Noblesville's median income, median earnings is about $34,000, average earnings of about $46,000, and 12% of the Noblesville workforce earn $79,000 or more. So this is a step in the right direction in terms of the income scale, and we appreciate the high-tech, high-sophisticated jobs that Panacea will be bringing to the city of Noblesville. I encourage the incentivization of this project because it is a quality-based incentive here today. As I've stated for many times before, with such a low unemployment in the city of Noblesville and really the state of Indiana, it's an imperative for us to incentivize the right type of jobs, not just any jobs coming to the city, and I know that you all share that agreement with me as well. Procedurally speaking, if all goes to plan, the council can expect future business items in your coming meetings that carry out the city's obligation under the agreement, including tax abatement approval. This resolution comes to you with full support from me and my administration and would request that this be approved as presented this evening. I know I'm happy to answer any questions. The member of our Economic Development Department is happy, and Mr. Ragu would do the same if you have any questions at this time.
Any questions for the mayor or for our visitors, soon-to-be residents?
Mr. President?
Yeah, Mr.
I'd like to
O'Connor.
hear from Ragu, particularly on the technology side, because I'd like to get a little better understanding of what the product does and how it's applied. But 5 minutes will do. You don't need to.
No issues. I'm glad
Yeah.
you're time boxing me. Raghu Padmanabhan. I currently reside in Rochester Hills, Michigan, but I'm looking forward to being a Indiana resident pretty soon. We've had family here that we've watched this part of the country grow from travels here from 1984 till now, and I've seen the city of Noblesville changing in its appeal to the way that you have new construction, you have new restaurants, you have a lot of new happenings at the Campus Parkway exit. So I'm delighted to be part of that. Now, from a technology perspective, what we are bringing to Noblesville is a linear accelerator radiation therapy machine. The machine itself weighs about 10 tons, but what it has is a highly integrated software, mechanical components and electronics that essentially allow for delivery of radiation, a photon radiation beam to cancer patients. There are some unique qualities to our product. We have a wider bore to what we call the ring gantry. There's a little model out there. If you step out later on, you can just see it. It's just a micro version of what will be a 9-foot tall machine, 5 foot deep, 9 foot wide, and the accuracy of the machine is one of the things that we've gone for, because anytime you expose cancer tissue, you're also impacting good tissue, and you want to absolutely minimize it down to zero if possible. And the way that the machine has been designed, there's a brilliant team that is behind it. There's about 125 R&D engineers that are working on that right now in India. But my goal, as I've talked to Mayor Jensen, is that this is not something that would be limited to just India. My plan is for us to have a facility that will actually foster a growing team that, as we learn over the first 18 months, that we can start working on value-add, R&D, and that will grow into what we can offer from Noblesville to the rest of the globe as well. It's not just something that we want to do. I'm very passionate about that. I've spent a tremendous amount of time starting with my career working for Xerox in Rochester, New York, to ending my career with Chrysler as far as automotive is concerned. I work for General Motors and Ford and Chrysler. And I want to tell you, I am eagerly looking forward to making sure that what we do here in Noblesville gets out on the map as something that is made, built, engineered, designed in Noblesville. So that is going to be one of the commitments that I will stand behind, and I will be there shoulder to shoulder with this team that I'm seeing in front of me as well as with me here, to make that happen. In terms of, the specificity of some of the qualities, there's a couch that the patient lies down on. You were asking about technology earlier. It has been designed with something that's industry unique. It actually learns the breathing pattern of a patient so that if you have a tumor, we don't stop the radiation beam, but the system and the machine adjusts itself to the breathing pattern of the patient. Because one of the most, as it is, having cancer is something that is really a challenge to anybody. But when you get in and you're lying down on it, to have to hold your breath is not an easy thing. Anybody that's been into an MRI machine or a CT scan machine knows what I'm talking about. That's also the reason why we have a wider bore opening to the gantry itself, because it allows for not only more precise placement of the patient with the radiation beam, but it also allows for avoidance of claustrophobia, especially younger patients, children especially, that have to go through this challenge of having to deal with cancer. It is much easier on them to know that there's air and space around them and they're not in a narrow chamber. If you don't have any other questions for me that you might be thinking of as I've been speaking, I am absolutely delighted to be here and looking forward to the day that I can have all of you there with us as we break ground and as we cut the ribbon for that plant.
I have one thought or question. We're talking about 65 potential new jobs. What is the education levels that you'll be targeting to try to fill just run the gamut from the beginning to the end of the?
For 24 of our resources, the requirement is an engineering degree, but in engineering there are multiple disciplines. We'll be looking for people, bringing in electronics backgrounds, software development backgrounds, microwave technology backgrounds, because as the linear accelerator has a radiation beam that gets triggered by a magnetron that goes through an electron beam. So people with that type of background is who we'll be looking for. Today, some of those people exist in the United States. Some areas where we have that specialty is in Wisconsin, as a matter of fact, in Milwaukee, where you have a lot of CT scan and MRI machines being made by GE and others. But there's also people on the West Coast, but we want to grow them here. I mean, that is going to be the key. And the philosophy of the company has been to grow expertise. So people who will bring that engineering background, we will work with them to grow that background and to make them experts in this field. Of the remaining 65, we would have people that are, both unskilled, but also people who can perform, tasks in terms of understanding, what's going on in the machine when we're testing it, making connections for testing, but also for assembly. Each machine will be assembled in a station, so just like aerospace, the parts will come to the assembly station, so the product itself will come together in one specific location or station in the plant. We plan to have 5 stations so that we can have at any given time 5 machines that are being assembled. One point that I didn't make is that as a responsibility perspective, Panacea Medical Technologies USA is actually the regional headquarters, and my responsibility will be to make sure that I have product not only for the Americas, which would be North, South, Central, and the Caribbean, but also all of Western Europe and Australia and New Zealand as well. And since we started getting into this journey, now Japan and Korea have become part of my responsibilities. So we have everything other than Russian-speaking countries that will be satisfied by a joint venture plant that the Indian company will have in Russia. And all of Africa and Asia will be taken care of by Panacea India.
Just thank you very much for being here.
Absolutely. Look forward to getting to know all of you. Thank you.
Anything else, Mr. Mayor?
No, appreciate your consideration. Thank you so much.
Mr. President,
Ms. Wiles.
I would move that we approve Resolution RC-8-20 as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve resolution number RC-8-20. This is a hand vote. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion carries 9-0. Congratulations. And welcome. We now have number 4, council to consider acceptance of conflict of interest disclosure. Councilman Peterson.
These are two projects we started. Fluid waste was a project we did in 2016, and they're ready for phase 2. They came to the Planning Commission for a text amendment, and it'll become before the council. I was the architect of record for phase 1 and phase 2. The second project is a project at 10th and Clinton that will come before the council because it's in the downtown district for a demolition permit and perhaps more partnership opportunities, but for now it's the demolition piece of that. I'll be the architect of record for that one as also.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Peterson? No? We need a motion to accept.
Mr. President,
Mr. O'Connor.
I move that we accept the conflict of interest disclosures from Councilman.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to accept the conflict of interest disclosures. This is a hand vote. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. 8. Are you going to abstain?
I'm going to abstain.
He is
I'm
abstaining.
not going to vote no.
Okay. I thought you might vote no. 8-0 and a 1 abstention. Thank you. Transfer number 1, council to consider transfer number TC-01-20 as amended to correct a Scrivener's error, cash transfer from the rainy day fund to the Parks and Recreation Fund. Mr. Spalding.
Mr. President, members of the council, Jeff Spalding, City Controller. This is about the most technical of a technical correction that you can have. It's for an item from last council meeting, which, as was referenced, is a cash transfer from one fund to another. At that last council meeting, it was both presented, advertised, discussed as a transfer from the rainy day fund to the Parks Fund to support that other action that you took earlier this evening. However, on the actual document, it didn't reference the rainy day fund, so this corrects that and references the rainy day fund as opposed to the general fund and fixes that error.
It's as much our error as it is everyone else's. I didn't catch it either.
Plenty of blame to go around,
There you go.
starting with me.
Mr. President, I would move to amend transfer TC-01-20 as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to amend transfer number TC-01-20 as presented. This is a hand vote. All those in favor? Passes 9-0. Now we need a motion.
Mr. President, I would move to approve transfer TC-01-20 as amended.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve transfer number TC-01-20 as amended. This is a hand vote. All those in favor? Passes 9-0. Okay, we have gotten to the end of the agenda, and we have time for council comments, if anybody would like to say their piece at this point. Any thoughts? No?
Just want to remind everybody I think everybody's seen it, but the State of the City is coming up Thursday at Embassy Suites.
Whole house sold out.
Sold out, standing room only.
Yeah.
Mr. President, I would just like to applaud the mayor and the governor but the mayor's staff for working with Panacea. We're very excited to welcome you to Noblesville. I think that this is a great first step in helping to grow Noblesville and moving it forward. So we welcome you and congratulations, Mayor and your staff.
Is there a motion to?
So moved.
Second.
We are adjourned then. We are adjourned.